We're in a series on Reconstruction, and it made me think of this sweater that I had as a kid. I think I was first or second grade, and there's this loose thread, and Mom was like, "Don't touch the thread," and I'm all, "This one?" And of course, I had to, pick at it, and in no time, the whole sweater was ruined, big hole in it, or maybe the whole thing even came apart because I thought it was interesting to keep pulling. And maybe that's what this feels like too, as you're talking about reconstruction and deconstruction. So I'm sitting down here in a conversation with Steve Ingold, our new lead pastor, you guys. Do I have to call you that now from now on?
Just call me Steve.
No. One of the really cool things is that we have revived our conversation guide that you can find on the website. And those the things in the conversation guide will help you as you talk with friends or in your small group, as you talk around the dinner table, or just on your own as you're trying to push through some of the material that we learn every week. And Steve, we can kind of start doing that now, actually, by just asking you about Reconstruction.
The sweater?
And about my sweater, yeah, about my
was it
sweater.
a nice sweater, or?
I think so.
So
I think
your
it was.
Parents were upset.
They were a little miffed, and I think that's what I think people would say, that this sounds a little scary when we allow that much space in interpreting Scripture, in deciding on theology, or feeling our way through theology. That doesn't sound healthy. Shouldn't there be, especially people like you, Steve, as you're standing in front of us on a somewhat almost weekly basis, helping us walk through really difficult things in the Bible, that you don't just go, well, there's a lot to unpack here, and let me pull on this thread a little bit. Aren't you afraid you're going to pull things apart for people?
No, I'm not afraid, and I'm actually hoping that we pull some things apart for people. I think it goes back to the Jenga illustration from the sermon, where it's like the foundation is Jesus Christ. The sweater analogy is great because, if it's all made of the same thing, as you keep pulling at it, it's going to unravel, right? But if our faith, with different levels of importance on different things, different foundational principles, different foundational ideas, there's certain things that we want to tug at, and then there's other things like Jesus and his incarnation and resurrection, and that God became human, and that he died and rose from the dead. There's certain things we don't want to pull at because it kind of disrupts the central ideas of our faith, right? But even then, it doesn't hurt to question and wonder and ponder, because I think that's what God moves us toward. For us to think that we have it all figured out and we have everything dialed in, and there's no way we could be wrong about anything, I think is arrogant, and it dismisses how big God is.
Yeah.
And I think for a long time, Christianity has tried to put God in these safe little boxes, and we put God in these boxes, and then we defend these boxes, and he didn't belong in any of the boxes in the first place.
No.
And so I think that's one of the things where I hope we do. I hope we do push people to question and wonder and ponder, because it just leads to a more vibrant faith in Jesus Christ. A stagnant or still or faith that's probably in trouble is a faith that looks at Jesus at face value and goes, "Yep, got it all figured out. I'm good." And I hope that's not true of any of us, especially me. I don't think anyone would want me to be in the position I'm in if I just take everything no, I figured this out when I was 16.
Yeah, I went to seminary and I got it all worked out.
Nothing's changed.
I've read a couple
since
of
then.
commentaries,
Which that's an interesting thing too. There's commentaries on everything throughout Scripture from brilliant people that spend so much time thinking about everything that completely disagree with each other on certain topics. So if that's the case, why would we just
Well, because one of them is Christian and one of them is obviously a heretic.
That's a dangerous...
but that's how I think we used to approach it like that. You're if you don't believe Scripture, if your theology doesn't line up exactly with mine in a very narrow way, and especially in the modern evangelical church, then you may not even be Christian.
Yeah, and that's I think I know we were joking before, but I think that is dangerous, because I think Jesus had a lot of things to say about positioning ourselves as the people who judge salvation. And if you're going to go down that path, I don't think Jesus had great things to say about us. And also, it's really easy to just get stuck in one line of thinking and think that you're right. Have you ever met a Calvinist that doesn't think they're elect? Like if that's your
Right. No,
theology,
they're all,
you know?
absolutely. Every one of them I've ever met.
And it's like, that's fascinating. But I think that's like the important thing to hold on to and remember is there's the foundational truths, reincarnation, or no,
Resurrection.
not reincarnation.
Yes, incarnation.
Now we're going
Resurrection.
down a whole different path. Incarnation, resurrection.
Yeah.
But then there's this room and space for so much of what we believe, but it's also really sad because it's what's caused people to create so many different denominations and make the Christian faith so segmented and like, well, we believe this and you believe that and we can't like each other because we believe different things.
You've said before that it is not, there is no them, it's only us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and why do we like that so much? We like to talk about them.
Because it's
them
comfortable.
are not.
It keeps us safe. It's counterintuitive, like we shared in the sermon, like to love your enemies and look at all people as image bearers of God. And it's sad that we do this even within the Christian faith. That if you think differently than I think, then you're not like me. Now we can all claim to follow Jesus Christ and proclaim Him as Master and Lord over our lives, but if there's these like non-essential beliefs about Christianity that we disagree on, then I'm going to start questioning whether or not we're going to be on the same page or we're compatible as followers of Jesus Christ. Like, it's challenging and it pushes everything about it pushes against the character and person of Jesus.
Absolutely. So. And if you haven't not yet seen part 1 of this series in Reconstruction, my favorite part is this. I'll give it away. My favorite part was looking at Jonah and saying maybe it's okay to just go, maybe he was actually in a fish and this really happened, or maybe it's just really good storytelling. We're not really sure, but here is the most outrageous part of the story is that Jonah was being asked by God to go to the Assyrians to tell them the good news. And the Assyrians were the sworn enemies of the people of God. They were like the Nazis to the Jews, so to speak. And so saying to a Jewish man, go to Berlin
during the height of World War II and go and preach the good news
Are
to
you out of your mind?
Nazis.
Yeah, and it didn't really matter how...
No, so you can... It makes it easier to know why Jonah was like, no. And he ran away from God. Because we don't associate with them.
And that's a common theme in the Bible. There's no them, it's just us.
It happens throughout and I wish I could tell some more stories about what happened in Joppa, but I think we're going to get there in a couple weeks and a couple more times that we gather. And so I won't, but it does come through Old Testament, Old Covenant, New Testament, like the things Jesus says, the way the church reacts and responds to different things. And
so how would you, just real quick to wrap it up, how would you calm somebody's fears of this slippery slope? When you allow that much freedom in reading Scripture and interpreting it, how can this not just lead to everybody losing their faith if you can't trust what Scripture says at face value?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many things I would say to that, but to like try and shrink it down a little bit. First of all, taking Scripture at face value. Like I said, there's so many people that think so many different things about Scripture. So it's just your faith, the face value that you draw out of it. The thing that I think is most important when it comes to this idea of a slippery slope or whatever else, so much of the angst that we feel is rooted in fear. And it's not fear of like, oh, people are going to walk away from the Christian faith. That's already happening. So, or you're going to lose your, like, I don't think, if you have a faith in Jesus Christ, you're not going to lose it. So what is the fear? And it's usually, if this happens, I'm going to lose my comfort, preferences, and control.
Yeah.
And if there's anything we read over and over and over in Scripture, the thing that's repeated most often, it's fear not or do not fear.
Yeah.
And I think that's, as we enter into some of these conversations, as we look at the landscape of our culture right now, if we really do have faith in Jesus Christ, we should want nothing more to bring people along that journey with Jesus. And fear is of the devil, and it's not of Christ. So if that's the case, then we have to pursue what love looks like, and sometimes love means, probably every time, love means letting go of our preferences and our control.
Wow.
So.
Well, in this series and with this topic, it's more important than ever to not struggle through this alone, but instead do this in community. Connect with me. My email address is right here. We've got so many different ways for you to connect with others and be in conversation. If you're in the East Bay area, find your way to one of our buildings throughout the next couple of weekends, because doing this in community, having people to converse with these really difficult things helps so much. I'm so glad that you were here. I'm so glad that you clicked here when there's so much else that you could choose to spend time with. And God bless you. He loves you. He's on your side. He's after you, and He is relentless. Talk to you soon.